Welcome back, focused learners, to the ultimate CLPP CLB 9 Plus Intensive Masterclass Explainer. Look, if you're aiming for those top-tier scores, you already know that basic, everyday vocabulary just isn't going to cut it. Today, we are leaving absolutely no stone unturned. We're going through these advanced terms one by one, giving you the exact pronunciation, the exact Chinese meaning, and, most importantly, the strategic Canadian context you need to deploy them perfectly. Get ready to rapidly and systematically upgrade your lexical resource. Let's do this.
Okay, let's dive right into our structured four-part agenda. First, we'll hit advanced connectors and phrasing. Then we'll look at building compelling arguments. From there, we transition into finances and daily life. And finally, we'll wrap the whole shebang up with consumer behavior and retail. It's clear, targeted, and highly intensive.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, Advanced Connectors and Phrasing. Think of these structural connectors as the architectural backbone of a high-scoring Writing Task 2 and Speaking Task 7. They immediately signal to the examiner that you can easily navigate complex academic and professional ideas.
Let's jump right into our first terms. Notwithstanding. Notwithstanding. 尽管. You might naturally associate this with in spite of, but notice the specific collocation I really want you to memorize here. Notwithstanding the fact that. When you're writing your Task 2 essay on a Canadian public policy, like, say, the carbon tax, use this to acknowledge the other side elegantly. Like, notwithstanding the fact that the carbon tax raises fuel costs, it remains vital for environmental targets. Conversely, 相反地. For Speaking Task 7, lock in this exact chunk. Conversely, it can be argued. Use it to pivot your argument smoothly. For example, conversely, it can be argued that subsidizing public transit is more effective. An underlying premise is that. 一个潜在的前提是. Note the key collocation here, based on an underlying premise. You are going to see this exact academic tone in Reading Part 4. When decoding an author's viewpoint on Canadian infrastructure, look for this phrase. It literally signals the foundational assumption of their entire argument.
Continuing with our connectors, it stands to reason that. 理所当然. For those top lexical scores, pair this with its collocation. Therefore, it stands to reason. In Speaking Task 7, when giving your opinion on community issues, use this instead of a basic "so I think." Say, therefore it stands to reason that investing in local libraries benefits everyone. See? It sequences your logic beautifully without sounding robotic at all. To elucidate further. 进一步阐明. Memorize this chunk. Allow me to elucidate further. Drop this into Writing Task 2 when you need to expand on a point. To elucidate further, a universal basic income could alleviate poverty. It's just a highly sophisticated way to introduce your supporting details.
Moving right along to Section 2, Building Compelling Arguments. The phrases we are about to cover add absolute authoritative weight to your opinions. If you want to maximize those lexical resource scores, you need words that punch hard.
Look at this absolute powerhouse of a phrase. A compelling argument can be made for. A compelling argument can be made for. 一个强有力的论点是. This is your ultimate opening hook for a Writing Task 2 survey response about local Canadian municipal issues. Instead of writing a boring basic, I agree with option A, you write, a compelling argument can be made for increasing property taxes to fund snow removal. I mean, it instantly elevates your entire essay.
So the crucial point here is how you connect mandatory actions to their outcomes. It is imperative that, 是至关重要的. To really impress the examiner in a Canadian workplace scenario for Speaking Task 8 or Writing Task 2, throw in the adverb absolutely. Like this, it is absolutely imperative that management addresses the safety hazards immediately. Consequently, 结果是或因此. Make sure you memorize the collocation, consequently resulting in. This one is a huge favorite in Listening Part 6. You'll hear someone discuss a policy shift, and then they'll trace the impact. They might say, the new zoning laws were passed, consequently resulting in a rise in employment. You're linking the government action directly to the result.
And this brilliantly illustrates the duality you need for top scores. Proponents argue that. 实质其认为. Opponents contend that. 反对其主张. Notice the adjectives here, strong proponents and staunch opponents. Using these exact pairings in Writing Task 2 is a guaranteed score booster. In Reading Part 4, which is literally all about viewpoints, you must identify who is on which side. When writing your balanced Task 2 essay, contrast the two sides using these exact terms. While strong proponents argue for urban densification, staunch opponents contend it ruins neighborhood character.
Now, let's tackle some negative scenarios. This exacerbates the issue of. You might already know this means it worsens the problem, but precisely it translates to 这个加剧了问题. The top-tier vocabulary booster here is the adverb. Use the collocation drastically exacerbates. When discussing the Canadian housing crisis or healthcare wait times in writing task 2, this is your go-to. A lack of funding drastically exacerbates the issue of emergency room wait times. In light of these circumstances, 这里即情况中 use the collocation acting in light of to transition into your solution in speaking task 7. Acting in light of these circumstances, the City Council must reform the transit system immediately.
Because complex themes require nuanced phrasing, right? Striking a balance between A and B. 在其间取得平衡. Canada is all about balance, multiculturalism, economic growth versus environmental protection. Use the collocation successfully striking a balance. In speaking task 7, successfully striking a balance between development and conservation is essential. Taking X into consideration. 考虑到. Make sure you memorize the full chunk here, carefully taking X into consideration. This is totally perfect for speaking task 6, where you're dealing with a difficult situation. Carefully taking your budget into consideration, I suggest we choose the second option.
Okay, these next two are incredibly sophisticated, like examiner wowing level. Unforeseen ramifications. 意料之外的后果. Highlight the adjective severe as the ideal collocation here. When discussing Canadian economic policies, mention the side effects. Raising the interest rate could have severe unforeseen ramifications for first-time homebuyers. A double-edged sword. 双刃剑. Use the verb pairing act as a double-edged sword. For speaking task 7, when a policy has clear pros and cons, you can say, social media can act as a double-edged sword in local politics.
Pay close attention to cause and effect here. Stemming from, 源于. Call out the collocation explicitly here, directly stemming from. In listening part 5, a discussion will very often trace a problem back to its root. The supply chain issues directly stemming from the port strike caused massive regional delays, culminating in, 以告终或达到顶峰. The perfect adverb pairing here is ultimately culminating in. In reading part 4, this maps out the climax of an event, years of negotiations, ultimately culminating in the new free trade agreement.
Let's wrap up our argument section with these closers. By means of, 通过的方式. The collocation to lock in is achieved by means of. In writing task 2, use this instead of simply writing the word by. This reform can only be achieved by means of strict legislation. Ultimately, 最终. Lock in the collocation ultimately decide. This is your absolute final word in speaking task 7. Ultimately, the taxpayers must decide. Let's move to section 3, finances and daily life, and see how this builds. This vocabulary is highly relatable, focusing on Canadian consumer habits, inflation, and personal finance contexts that are tested heavily across literally all celpip modules. Let's ground these in everyday scenarios we all know too well. Frugal living. As you can guess, this points to a thrifty lifestyle, which translates to 节俭生活. With grocery inflation being a massive topic in Canada right now, use this in speaking task 1 when giving advice to a friend who's trying to save some money. I highly recommend adopting a lifestyle of frugal living. Impulse purchase. 冲动购物. Listen for this in listening part 4 news items. Retailers rely heavily on impulse purchases at the checkout counter. Cost-effective. 性价比高的，划算的. When you're comparing options in speaking task 2, say, shopping at the local discount retailer is a much more cost-effective choice.
Okay, these are macro financial terms you absolutely must master. Disposable income. 可支配收入. Call out the collocation, lack of disposable income. When writing about CRA taxes or the cost of living in task 2, mention how policies actually affect wallets. A hike in taxes leaves citizens with a lack of disposable income. Quality of life. 生活质量. Lock in the collocation, overall quality of life. Canada's known for this. In speaking task 1, mention it. Moving to a quieter province can greatly improve your overall quality of life. Consumer rights. Consumer rights. 消费者权益. Lock in Protect Consumer Rights. You will see this exact pairing in Reading Part 3 informational texts. The new federal mandate is designed to protect consumer rights against predatory lending.
Now let's pivot to mindset and education. Materialistic pursuits. Materialistic pursuits. 物质追求. Use the collocation purely materialistic pursuits. In a Speaking Task 7 debate about modern values, you could totally argue people are increasingly abandoning purely materialistic pursuits for mental well-being. Financial literacy. Financial literacy. 金融素养 or 理财能力. Lock in, promote financial literacy. This concept is heavily tested in reading sections about banking or debt management. High schools must do more to promote financial literacy among teenagers.
Notice the brilliant narrative contrast here between professional awareness and personal struggle. Keep abreast of. Keep abreast of. 紧跟步伐,了解最新动态. In listening part 2, in a professional workplace context, you're often going to hear, it's vital to keep abreast of local news regarding industry regulations. Make ends meet. Make ends meet. 维持生计. Conversely, when talking about the notoriously expensive Canadian housing market in Speaking Task 1, you might say, many young professionals struggle to make ends meet.
And just like that, we've reached our final section, Section 4, Consumer Behavior and Retail. This specific set of terms is absolutely critical for Speaking Task 3 picture descriptions and everyday listening interactions. Let's finish strong, folks. Let's map these straight to everyday retail interactions. Minimalist lifestyle. Minimalist lifestyle. 极简生活方式. In Speaking Task 7, you could advocate for less consumption. Embracing a minimalist lifestyle reduces environmental impact. Warranty claim. Warranty claim. 保修复配. In Listening Part 3 conversations, someone is always returning something, right? I need to file a warranty claim under Canadian consumer protection laws. Exorbitant prices. Exorbitant prices. 过高的价格. Use this when you are complaining in Writing Task 2. Canadians are subjected to exorbitant prices for telecom and internet services.
Now, what's really interesting about this next slide is how it captures the changing Canadian retail landscape. Brick-and-mortar stores. Brick-and-mortar stores. 实体店. Here is a massive test tip for Speaking Task 3. If the image shows a shopping mall, don't just say shops. Say, we are looking at traditional brick-and-mortar stores facing heavy competition from e-commerce. Substandard goods. Substandard goods. 劣质品. If you get a complaint letter prompt in Writing Task 1, use this exact term. I am writing to formally request a refund due to the substandard goods I received.
So, we've systematically locked in 35 essential, high-level terms today, but I want to leave you with a provocative challenge right here on our final slide. Take our hardest term, unforeseen ramifications, and mentally map it out. If your Writing Task 2 prompt is about implementing a new city transit tax, how exactly will you use that phrase to construct a compelling CLB 9+ argument? Think about it, practice it, and bring this level of lexical mastery to your test day. Thank you so much for joining this Masterclass Explainer. Keep practicing, and good luck.